Hey everyone, this is Spencer Michaud. I wanted to do a little video for you today to welcome you to the spring equinox, which was actually yesterday. But in true Mercury retrograde fashion, I've been uh, a day late, a dollar short. But um, wanted to come test out doing a video today, give you a few updates on what's going on around here, and do a little screen share and talk a little bit about the synodic cycles of Mercury and Venus, because we're right in the middle. Well, we're always in the middle of them, but today we're focusing on Mercury, since we've got a Mercury retrograde right now, and we just started a new Mercury synodic cycle. So yeah, what I've been doing lately is I've been reading Demetra George's book. I'll give it another plug here because it's such a great book, Ancient Astrology in Theory and Practice by Demetra George. Really amazing book. Just been kind of bulldozing my way through it in Mars in Taurus style. Just kind of plugging away one day at a time, creating quite a bit of notes. So I want to show you. I've got this beautiful Cornell note-taking system called Focus Notes, and you can get these. These are real cheap, but they have these beautiful little different sections that you can, write your notes in, so they're more organized and whatnot. So I've been going chapter by chapter and taking a lot of notes, and got about half this thing filled up so far. I feel like it helps me to learn it if I can write it down, and I can, it helps me remember things a lot better if I'm a visual learner. So if I see it in my own handwriting, that can help me kind of process it and whatnot. So some of these things are new to me. Some of the things I've been working with my astrology teacher, with Adam Ellenboss of Nightlight Astrology. You should check him out I think it's nightlightastrology.com. Wonderful teacher. He's been working with us on a lot of these things, but it's really great to see Demetra's take on this too. One of the things I really like about her book, which you can get from, where is this from? Rubedo Press. There you go. See, I give a little plug to my buddy Aaron Cheek out there at Rubedo Press, publisher of fine astrology and metaphysical books, near you. Anyway, what was I saying? This is the most Mercury retrograde podcast type of thing ever. It's not even a podcast. So basically, I've been going through Demetra's book, and little by little, day by day, processing things. And one of the things I like about her book is that she has all these exercises in the end of it, end of each chapter, so to speak. And she is very good at summarizing things so that you kind of have an idea of what the main takeaways are from the chapter that you're reading. And there's a lot of information there. When you're starting to study traditional astrology, it's very, very detailed, and there's lots of rules that you need to understand so you can see how it all fits together as a whole. So that's something I wanted to talk about today. The other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit before we dive into that is that I will be this weekend on March 23rd and 24th. I'm going to be at the Enlightened Soul Expo at Skyline High School in Ann Arbor. It's a large metaphysical kind of event where there will be vendors and readers and whatnot. And I'm going to be doing astrology readings from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, the 23rd, and from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the 24th on Sunday. So if you're in the local Michigan, Ann Arbor area, or the Midwest, if you want to make a trip, I will be there doing readings. So wanted to give you a heads up on that. What else? We've got the Aries ingress yesterday, the ingress of the sun into Aries, which is a pretty cool event. It marks the spring equinox. And a number of things are happening concurrently when we're seeing the sun move into Aries. So we have the return of the light. Okay, so the they call it the equinox because the day and the night are equal in length. And now we have the domination of the solar hours or the daytime hours over the nighttime. So the days are starting to get longer. And this is one of the justifications that ancient astrologers had for giving the sun dignity in the sign of Aries. They said that the sun was exalted or had honors or esteem. It was gaining in power. So the Aries sun time is a really great time to start things. It's a really, there's a lot of energy behind our ideas and our actions. We're kind of coming out of the Piscean cloud where, you know, maybe things were a little bit more ambiguous. We're not quite out of it yet because we've still got Mercury in Pisces there, which is, you know, clouding things up a little bit. It's retrograde. It's, you know, putting a little bit of a gunk in the gears, so to speak, as you can see even with our video here today. But that's going to be coming to an end pretty soon. So I wanted to kind of go over that a little bit. We also had a full moon yesterday and today. I think it was exact around 9-ish Eastern time last night, but we're still feeling the effects of it, which is kind of an interesting juxtaposition of the new start with the Aries sun and the kind of a culmination that you feel at a full moon or things coming to light. So there may be a push or a pull between your own self-interest and things where you may have to team up with other people. It's a good time for balance. It's a good time to begin things, but also to see how those choices that you're making are going to affect or whether you need to include other people within them as well. So that's what we've got coming up here. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen here. I'm doing an experiment today, seeing how it works out. This is my sharing solar fire here. So hopefully everybody's able to see that. And I'm going to be 100% honest. I haven't used solar fire a ton yet. I've been using Astro Gold on my phone and on my iPad and things like that. I think SolarFire is an amazing program. The only challenge that I have with it is that since I'm a Mac user, I have to use a parallel, and that kind of slows everything down. But I thought today that I would, you know, take the leap, and it's a, you know, new spring season. We'll see if it keeps working out. Hopefully, you folks over there at, you know, at SolarFire will get that Mac version out soon, because I think there's a lot of people that would love to be able to use that. You can see that I've got the decans, the decanic rulers that are listed on the outside of my wheel here, and I've got my 7 traditional planets listed, as well as the ascendant and the descendant. So what I wanted to go over today was a little bit about the synodic cycles of the inferior planets. 2 different cycles. The inferior planets are the ones that are inside the orbit of the sun in the Chaldean order. So that would be Mercury and Venus. The superior planets would be the ones that would be outside and with Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And they have a little bit of a different cycle. So the first kind of thing that we're going to see here is this is the chart today in the morning. So I wanted to make it in the morning because I wanted you to see the sun on the horizon and how Mercury is going to be, you know, in relationship to the sun and the horizon and the visibility of it. So what we're seeing here is right now that Mercury is about 18 degrees away from the sun in Pisces. It's separating, okay? And it is retrograde in motion. There's 2 types of motion in the zodiac. One is what's called the primary motion, and you can see that it moves this way, all right, clockwise around the chart. And it represents the sky as we see it from in the east where all the planets emerge from the horizon, culminate here in the southern sky at noon, set down here in the west, and then they go underneath the horizon down here in the north. Okay, so when we see the sun emerge over the horizon, the horizon line is actually going to be in our chart, since we're using whole sign houses, is going to be the ascendant. So you can see in this chart here at about 8:14 a.m., the sun has already risen. And before it, Mercury and Venus have risen. Okay, so Mercury and Venus, our 2 inferior planets, have risen before the sun. Okay, and that stage, when they rise before the sun, they're in their morning star phase. This is called their morning star phase. Okay, So in a morning star, all that really means is that they are rising before the sun and they're visible in the sky as the sun is rising or before the sun has risen. Okay. So let's back up this chart and show the very beginning of this cycle. So I'm going to step back a day or two. And what I'm doing is I'm looking for the inferior conjunction, the retrograde conjunction right here of Mercury and the sun. Okay. And if we go back even a few hours, we're going to get this condition. Okay. Well, we don't want to move all that around, but we're going to get this condition called Cazimi, which is where Mercury is in the heart of the sun, exactly conjunct the sun. And you can see here, there's two different schools of thought with this. The medieval astrologers said that the Mercury was Cazimi, or in the heart of the sun, when it was within 17 minutes. All right. According to Demetra George, she says that the Hellenistic astrologers said it was within 1 degree. So, there are different opinions on that. So we can see what works for you, maybe experiment. So I'm going to put this back on the horizon here so we can see what we're doing. So this is when we had the inferior conjunction. And, in Demetra's chapter, she talks about planetary speed. And this is when the planet is moving extraordinarily slow during its retrograde cycle. Okay, so the planet is moving very slow. She was also discussing that when a planet is retrograde, especially Mercury, it's kind of taking back its significations. She was comparing it to someone going on a road trip, and when the planet is in direct motion, it's basically got good directions. It's going in a forward path. It's allowing for a reasonable rate of speed to directly go towards its destination. Well, when this planet starts to go retrograde, she's starting to compare that to a detour or some kind of thing that, where maybe there's an accident and you have to get off the highway and start taking a side road or something of that nature. And perhaps you have to go in the opposite direction for a period of time to avoid the accident. So that's kind of the cycle that we're seeing during the inferior conjunction. The other thing I wanted to point out with that is that in traditional astrology, you have this guest host type of relationship between a planet and a house. So in our chart here, for example, Mercury, if our ascendant is Aries, Mercury is going to be responsible for providing for the third house of Gemini, okay, and the sixth house of Virgo. And you can find this in your own chart. Mercury is going to be providing for whichever two houses are represented by Gemini and Virgo in your chart. Now, if you have Mercury retrograde natally, there may be challenges and roadblocks for Mercury providing for those two houses. So this is something to keep an eye on with your own chart. And this is something we're experiencing collectively right now. So if you look at those two houses in your chart, you may be able to see that there's something that's been kind of delayed, that's been held back. Maybe you're going in a little bit of an opposite direction. But ultimately, and this is something that Adam speaks to, when the planets are moving in this diurnal or primary motion, they are said to be of an eternal nature rather than moving in the secondary zodiacal motion, where they are more related to the realm of fortune, all right, and the realm of the moon. This was related to the moon, the coming into being and passing away of forms, whereas this primary motion was related to the sun. So the interesting thing about that, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed hearing him speak about, is that when a planet moves retrograde, it's kind of like the universe is in charge. The planet doesn't have really its own will anymore, and it has to submit to the greater will. And this might be something to take into consideration when you're kind of bemoaning Mercury retrograde or Venus retrograde or any of these things. It might be just a course correction that's helping to, it's kind of like, I don't know, the universe has a better plan, or the God has a better plan, or whatever you want to call it. So here we see the inferior conjunction, where that planet is moving extraordinarily slow. If we back it up even let's back it up by a day, you can see that beforehand, Mercury was underneath the sun, all right? And now it was moving into the furnace, okay, into the fire. It was kind of going into, like, they thought of that as the fire or the furnace that helped rebirth the energy of the planet. So when you have a planet going in conjoining with the sun, it's weakened because it's burning off the dross. This is another kind of thing that I've been kind of exploring lately, is alchemy and Hermeticism through this book here, The Emerald Tablet, which was recommended to me by a good friend, Mr. Gary Caton, of the Hermetic Astrology podcast. Check him out. Really interesting stuff there. And they talk about that process of calcination, where you're burning off the dross. And that's kind of what we're burning off, all the things that are holding us down, that are weighing us down, all the things we've accumulated. And perhaps in that planetary cycle, you're burning off all of the experiences to be reborn again. So the planet's kind of going through a rebirth when it gets into a conjunction with the sun. As the planet moves away from the inferior conjunction, now the inferior conjunction, the beginning of the cycle, Venus and Mercury are always going to be retrograde at the beginning, at the first contact, the inferior conjunction. As they move away, we've got the distance starting to increase between Mercury and the sun. Okay. So you can see now it's 8 degrees away, 10 degrees away. A couple other things to keep in mind is these planets have average daily motions, all right, or mean motions. And for Mercury, that average motion, if I'm not mistaken, is roughly similar to the sun, which is 1 degree per day. And you're going to see the cycle of Mercury speed up and slow down with that 1 degree average motion when it gets to these different points. So right now it's starting to separate from the sun. We can see it's about 16 degrees away, okay? And it's rising, all right? It's rising away from the sun towards the culminating point. Now, it's never going to get there because Mercury in particular is never more than 28 degrees away from the sun. So that's something that you can keep in mind here too. But we get to a point here where there's two things. First of all, we've got this point here where we are moving towards 15 degrees. At about 15 degrees of distance, arc of distance here, arc of separation, we have something called the heliacal rising. So what that basically means is that Mercury is escaping from the beams of the sun. There was a condition in traditional astrology called being under the beams, which basically meant that on 15 degrees of either side of the sun, a planet was not visible when it was transiting over the horizon during the morning. Okay, so Mercury has basically disappeared under these beams here. And that can also keep the significations of that planet hidden. So one of the interesting things is that, maybe you're doing some Mercury things right now that have remained in the shadows. Because right now we're still kind of in this, well, not today. We've escaped the beams. So let's look here. Nope, not yet. We're still in the beams. Sorry. There we go. So by Saturday, so this is kind of cool. By Saturday, some of the things that you've been working on may start to become visible because Mercury is going to make his appearance as a morning star or a star of the morning that's visible before sunrise. Okay. and it's going to be kind of moving away from the sun. And it's starting to slow down as it moves towards its next phase, which is called the direct station. There it is. You see this little S here. That means that Mercury is starting to station. It's getting really slow, and it's getting ready to turn direct. Okay, so there we go. Now Mercury is direct, and it's a morning star. Mercury is direct. Some of the significations of the planet they're visible now. Okay, they are starting to move in a forward direction, and we could see that stationing is happening at the end of next week through the 28th and 29th, and then by that weekend again, we're going to have Mercury going in direct motion, moving towards something called its greatest elongation. Okay, and that's the distance where it's the furthest away from the sun. Okay, right now we got 15, 15 plus 12, roughly 27 degrees. There's about 28 degrees or so here. Okay, and we are going to start to see Mercury descending again back to becoming in forward motion. It's going to start moving back into a conjunction with the sun. Okay, and this is a time when it's increasing in speed. When it does its superior conjunction. Okay, if I move forward to the into May here, we see here we've got the superior conjunction happening where Mercury and the sun are conjoining again at the end of May. All right, so there's the next cycle. It's moving. Mercury's moving at its fastest speed. It's Cazimi once again. It's in its own domicile. All right, so that's going to be a really powerful time around the May 21st and 22nd when Mercury is Cazimi in its own sign. So that's a really powerful time for communication and whatnot. And then you're going to see it. It's going to be under the beams right now, and you're going to see it start to separate and become an evening star where it is rising after the sun in the east. Now we're going to get to this point where we're going to see that separation happening again at 15 degrees. Okay, so here we have, around June 3rd, we're going to see Mercury escape the beams and make its first appearance as an evening star. So we're going to actually see it if we move this over by a few hours. When the sun set, we'd actually start to be able to see Mercury in the night sky over on the western horizon here. Okay, so that's something that's a really interesting focal point. Are these appearances of Mercury from out of the beams? I did some experiments with this with my own chart and with secondary progressions. This is a really interesting technique that you can do. I know, talking about your own chart, I mean, I'm using that because I've experienced it. So it's the easiest one to do. And you can do this with your own chart at home. But for example, when I was born with Mercury retrograde, and it was moving into its inferior conjunction. Okay, so like for example, it had already gone direct and done its Cazimi, and then it had already gone back to its became an evening star, started to station and move retrograde back into the conjunction again. Well, you could trace really important events that happen in the different phases. So for example, I had a pretty big life change where I went to go live with a different parent when Mercury moved into a conjunction by secondary progression with my son when it went Cazimi, a completely new life change. And that was the beginning of a whole new cycle. I was living with my mom until I was 4 years old, and then I went to go live with my dad. And so that was a whole different thing. It was like, being forged in the fire there, right? As Mercury escaped from the beams, the exact degree I guess let me back up. The concept with secondary progressions is that, your natal chart is moving forward by 1 day for every year of your life. So it's kind of this esoteric timing technique where you're seeing the different, um, you've got kind of time is being equated uh, from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Okay, so you could see when my Mercury escaped the beams and got a 15-degree separation from the sun, uh, I basically got my first guitar. So I was a professional musician for a long time, and I got my first guitar, and like I was able to communicate in a way that was visible, where it was something where I, was able to to speak a little bit better through music and things like that. I still struggle with the words here, as you can see, but working through it. Um, but I felt much more comfortable communicating through music, and that guitar was something that helped me through that. And that was right when Mercury had escaped the beams, around 15 degrees. And it was about the same age that that had happened. Um, when Mercury stationed direct, in my secondary progression chart, at that chart there, at that point where it was stationing and moving direct, that's when I had my first public performance. So you could see it was moving forward in a direction. There were really big landmark points in your life, if you're tracing this through your secondary progressions, that you might be able to see if you have uh, an interesting Mercury cycle. Another point that happened was when my Mercury went back under the beams. Uh, right before it went back under the beams, I released my first album. And then it went directly under the beams. And then I was like, I think I'm going to shift courses here and start something else. And I started studying astrology a lot more in depth. And it was, going back into the fires of the sun to figure out something new. And I stopped doing music as much as I had before, and that Mercury became less visible. And a lot of the events that I was, related to Mercury became much more invisible, like doing a lot more reading, a lot more studying, a lot more private work rather than public work. And I think that can be something that's really interesting to explore in your own chart. So, I wanted to just give you a little taste of this today. We could see that we haven't really gone through our whole cycle here, but if I move through the days here, we already saw the second conjunction, the second cazimi, and now we're separating, and we had Mercury's appearance as an evening star, so that was something that we were working through as well. And then Mercury is going to start stationing again as it gets to its greatest elongation in the evening sky. We're going to see it. Where is our station? Okay, there's our station. All right, our station is happening around July 7th, which happens to be my birthday. That'll be fun. We'll see Mercury stationing again, and then starting to move retrograde. Okay. So it's going to be cazimi again and start its whole new cycle. So you can see we've gone through the different stages. So we've got the inferior conjunction, which is retrograde and very slow. The distance starts to increase, and then we slow to the direct station. After the direct station, we start to pick up speed and get to our point of greatest elongation. We have the average speed of Mercury happening in its greatest elongation in the morning sky. After that, we have its descent as a morning star. It starts to increase in speed. At the superior conjunction, it's going to be moving at its maximum speed and going, it's of course doing its second cazimi, and moving, through the beams, kind of in the hidden place there, where it's going to start separating. It'll start decreasing in speed, but be fast. And moving to its greatest elongation, again, it'll reach its average rate of speed. Now, before we had its appearance as an evening star as it escaped 15 degrees of the sun, below the sun as well. So, and then it'll retrograde at its second station, become very slow, and then move back into the inferior conjunction with the sun. There's another point in this called the heliacal set, where that's where you're seeing it as the last appearance as an evening star when it's moving under the beams 15 degrees away from the sun. So hopefully that was clear. Like I said, a little experiment today, sharing all the screen and giving you the updates on things here. I wanted to take you a little bit through and introduce some of the Mercury cycles here, more of as an experiment too. Practicing making these videos and teaching the things that you know. Some of the best things that you can do is teach what you know to start to gain fluency with that. So I apologize if some of it wasn't clear, but if you have any questions, let me know. Maybe put a comment in the video or whatnot. I'm going to try to start making some more of these educational videos and get some more stuff out there for you. I think there's a lot of room for more education out there, and I think that if you're learning something and you're a student, sharing it and trying to be more of a, sometimes your cup gets really full, and you've got to kind of keep the information flowing through you so that you can have more things come in. If you just are hoarding this knowledge, that can you can start to feel backed up a little bit. And that's kind of the point that I was getting to. I was studying and studying and studying, and I was just starting to feel backed up, and I wanted to start to share something, just so I was kind of, continuing the cycle. So that's what I've got for today. Hopefully this was useful or helpful for all of you. I want to thank Demetra George for all her wonderful work on her book, and also Aaron Cheek for being an awesome publisher as well. Maybe in the future, if I write a book, Aaron will be able to put it out there into the world, or at least I'll get to visit New Zealand at some point. Anyway, but I hope all of you have a great day today, and hopefully I'll see some of you locally at the Enlightened Soul Expo this weekend, the 23rd and the 24th. So that's what I've got for today. So I hope everyone's doing well, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.